following is a presentation of
Balera, Boxing, Idol, shout out.
It wasn't too long ago that the 147-pound welterweight division was the hot ticket and roster in boxing, headlined by Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. The welterweight division saw new stars emerge like Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman, and Sean Porter, to only name a few. Now the hot division in boxing is the 135-pound lightweight division. Stacked with incredible elite talent, we're hoping the lightweight division does not suffer from the same plague the welterweight division did for so many years. Elite fighters not fighting one another in their primes. We, however, had the pleasure of watching some of the top fighters at 135 with our own eyes. I'm Chris from Valera Boxing, and I'm joined by Carlo, Philip, and Monty. Gentlemen, good evening.
How are you?
So what's up?
The end of the 2021 calendar proved to be an amazing season for the lightweight division. Phil and I witnessed a fight of the year candidate with Teofimo Lopez losing his belts, including the lineal championship to George Kambosos Jr., in a major upset rattling the boxing world. Devin Haney successfully defended his WBC World Championship in a decision over Jojo Diaz. Gervonta Davis survived an incredible effort from Cruz, and Visiliy Lomachenko won by decision over Richard Comey, a fight we also saw live at Madison Square Garden. So we ranked the top flight of 135 based on what they saw in each of their last fights, and if each fighter were to go head to head. Their resumes are important, but because of the volatility of the division, I mean, look at Teo last year and Kambosos this year. We thought, what have you done for me lately and where are you going was good criteria in ranking 135. Now, folks watching will disagree or get upset, but hey, each has to be ranked somewhere. But before we hear from the panel, let's share the lightweight rankings from Ring Magazine and BoxRec. How do you see the lightweight division stacking up in the next year with 2022 and potential big ticket, big money fights coming up for each of these fighters?
Yeah, 2022 should be the year. A lot of these fighters in the 135s are undefeated. So, or with like 2 or less losses, you know, they're all tight. They all have knockout powers. They can all end the fight pretty early. So big names, it can draw a lot of attention. It can draw a lot of crowd, a lot of money. So I think this weight class really needs to happen in the 2022. I think enough with the talking. We want to see the big fights. Whoever answers the call, I want to see it.
So Phil, we were lucky that we saw 3 of these guys fight. We saw George Kambosos take down Teofimo Lopez at the Garden. We saw Vasily Lomachenko, who we've actually seen, I think, 4 times already, each time at the Garden, take down Richard Comey. What do you think 2022 looks like for the lightweight division?
Man, there's so many good fighters. It's hard to pick. When I had to make this list, I had to change it around 3 times because the skill level between these guys are really close together. So it's hard to say. Kambosos had a great fight. Loma came off a good win against Comey. And then you got these other guys coming up, these young guys in the division coming up, Devin Haney, Jojo Diaz, Isaac Cruz. So it's going to be an exciting year. And I want to see all these guys fight each other, man. It's going to be that good.
Monty, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a very stacked division. I guess promotional and political intrigue is what has stopped some of these fights from happening. But my biggest excitement is actually the fact that many of them, as Carlo mentioned, they haven't fought each other, and that remains that issue. So, although 2020 there was some missed opportunities from the pandemic, 2021 you had that wonderful upset with George Kambosos, which you all got to see, and the willingness of some of these fighters to really engage in the coming year is going to be crucial. So I'm really excited about the top of the division.
Carl, let's start with you. How do you rank the 135-pound division based on what you saw in the end here of 2021 and looking forward to 2022?
All right, I'm starting off with obviously the man who beat the man, which is George Kambosos as my number 1. Then we're going to go with Tank Davis, and then Teo, and then Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Joseph Diaz, Ryan Garcia, and it's tough for me to whether put Comey or Linares there, tied for 8th. Number 2, 3, 4, 5 is really hard to put in order, but I'm basing it on performance, how active they are. Teo, even though he lost, but he lost to the man that challenged him. And I think a lot of people, that's the thing about this 135 division. Not everyone wants to step up, and it's Kambosos stepped up, so he got my vote as number 1. Loma's last performance, it's like he hasn't lost a step. He like Monty said, he recovered, all right, mentally, physically, comfortable. He's in there having fun. He's hungry. He wants all the belts. So that's why I put him as number 4. Devin Haney has about 27 fights now, 27-0. So his record is meaning he's active at a young age. It shows that he's active, even though I don't think his foes are as big as the names as I have ahead of him. He's been active. So to his credit, he's been fighting, and right now he's starting to get to the bigger names. He beat Linares. He beat Jojo Diaz. Okay, so that's why he earned that spot to me.
Philip, how do you rank the lightweight division?
So my list is kind of like Carlos. Number 1, I have Kambosos. Like Carlos said, he beat the man, and now he is the man, the number 1 guy. Number 2, I have Loma. He just came off that win from off of Comey. Number 3, I have Teo. I mean, yeah, he took an L, but he's still part of that. In my opinion, he's still top 3, top 5 at least. Number 4, I have Tank. He just came off that win off of Isaac Cruz. And I have ahead of Devin Haney Tank, because I just feel like Tank is more he's more dangerous than Devin Haney. Devin Haney's good. He has a good record. He's undefeated, just like Tank, but Tank is just dangerous. I just feel he's a lot more dangerous than Devin Haney. So I have him a rank ahead. Number 5 is Devin Haney. He's a great boxer, but he hasn't really fought anyone yet. He hasn't fought any of the top 4 or 5 guys, at least. So he has to show me more if he wants to get up those rankings. And then 6, 7, 8, I have Isaac, Cruz, Jojo Diaz, and Comey. Why I don't have Ryan Garcia on that list? If you want to be part of the conversation, you got to be active. And he hasn't fought since 2019. So I'm not even going to talk about Ryan Garcia. But, yeah, that's my list.
Monty, let's discuss your rankings for the lightweight division.
I agree with, I guess, Carlo and Philip as well, that Kambosos really is deservingly of that top ranking. I mean, he thoroughly dominated Teofimo Lopez, who had thoroughly dominated Lomachenko. And so we can speak to an actual fight or actual fight data when it comes to these rankings, at least at the top. We have yet to see what Devin Haney can do against the highest caliber of competition. However, the way that he has dominated the opponents in front of him and his very impressive physical attributes, I kind of liken my high ranking of him to kind of the same way that people have treated, Terrence Crawford. Highly regarded, has the attributes, does very well with who's put in front of him, but not necessarily beating world beaters. Recently, you had this really, really big contrast between what Jojo Diaz was not able to do versus Devin Haney, contrasting that with what Isaac Cruz, the Pitbull, was able to do against Tank Davis, which was what came out of that fight is Tank Davis's discomfort with inside pressure fighters. Clearly, he still dominated the fight in the end. He still won, still outlanded. But just even from his facial expressions to the actual scoring of the fight, because it was a very, very close fight, I thought that Tank Davis simply didn't have a plan for a pressure fighter who moved his head well. Whereas if you contrast that with Devin Haney's fight against Jojo Diaz, he was constantly countering. He was constantly fighting back, constantly switching back from offense to defense. And so I really think that, yeah, the caliber of fighter is not the best, but the way that he dominates, it shows me something. As far as Lomachenko, he needs to beat Teofimo Lopez if he wants to go higher than what I have him. You know, I have him fifth outside of the top four. Teo had one bad loss. However, the way that he's dominated in his previous fights, you know, is something that we still have to give him credit for.
So I based my ranking using traditional criteria, but I did consider who beat who and who can beat who. Certainly, we've talked about future fights in 2022 and the fights we want to see, and a little bit later we'll get into who exactly we want to see matched up in 2022. But I have Devin Haney ranked first, with George Kambosos ranked second. Certainly, George Kambosos is the lineal champion at 135. I personally want to see Devin Haney and George Kambosos fight to become the undisputed champion. But I do have Devin Haney ranked first, only because if there was a head-to-head with George Kambosos, just my opinion right now, I feel that Devin Haney would come out victorious in that fight. But it is certainly no disrespect to the accomplishment of George Kambosos being the multi-belt and lineal champion in the lightweight division. I have Gervonta Tank Davis ranked third, Teofimo Lopez ranked fourth, and Visiliy Lomachenko ranked fifth. Those five, in my opinion, are the class of 135. I will round out Cruz, Jojo Diaz, and Ryan Garcia as 6, 7, and 8. Cruz is certainly deserving of being in the conversation for future big fights in the division, certainly with his performance against Gervonta Tank Davis. He has come on the scene and has won the hearts of many, but it was still a loss. It was a tough loss because he did perform well and had a heck of a fight, as many people did predict prior to the fight against Tank Davis, but you still have to win. And certainly I hope he gets another shot at having a big fight. There is talk of a near future fight with Ryan Garcia. Perhaps this will be the fight that really establishes where Cruz and Ryan Garcia stand in this division. It's a king of the hill sport, as Carlo often says. And this is a very, very large hill, and they're going to have to step over one another to really claim that throne. But I do want to talk about future fights heading to 2022. Like everyone else, we want to see the best fight the best and not duck one another. But with this division, there are just too many good fighters for these fights to not happen. With championships and belts on the line, it only makes sense. I mentioned that I want to see Devin Haney and George Kambosos fight next so that we could have a unified champion at 135. That would be fantastic. What is the big fight that each of you want to see in the lightweight division?
I really want to see Ryan Garcia against anyone in this top 10 right now. I think he's the one that really needs to be active. He's in a camp with Canelo Alvarez, so you know it's a top-notch boxing camp. He's training with the pound-for-pound fighter, #1 fighter in the world right now. So he's getting good experience there, good knowledge, okay? And he's a very athletic, very skilled fighter, very young, good record, obviously. So I really want to see him with the top dogs here. Tank is always going to be included in mine because I know he's, Phil said something that stood out was he's more dangerous than Haney. And I agree with him in that sense. That's why I put Tank there. I think a lot of these fighters also are they're claiming they want Tank, right? So I want to see these guys step up to Tank. I think Tank can that's what we're looking for. I mean,
so Monty, who do you want to see fight in 2022?
I mean, I would love to, even though we keep hearing this stuff with Teofimo Lopez. We're not sure if he was just concussed after the Kambosos fight, saying, "I'm done with this weight class. I'm done with this weight class." And we have to establish whether he's going to stay in this division or not. And if he's going to stay in this division, will he fight Lomachenko again? Will he attempt to get another belt to stay in it? So I think that's a valid point. And I actually just remembered that that's what the last word out of his camp was to leave the lightweight division, go to 140. So the matchup, of course, that I think a lot of people want to see is, Tank Davis versus Devin Haney. And that's an explosive matchup. And I'm going to say this again. I mean, Devin Haney, as potentially untested as you might think he is, he possesses some top-level attributes.
Absolutely. His skill is top-notch. In fact, to me, he's a modern, it's funny to say modern-day Floyd Mayweather Jr., like Floyd is ancient. But the skills are very, very comparable. He is that type of fighter. He could fight defensively. He could fight offensively. Clearly has enough power. He has a chin.
Yeah.
And
he's got
that's why I ranked him. That's why I ranked him at the top. And it like I said, it is no slight to any of the other fighters. In fact, any of those fighters could beat anyone on any given day. Anyone in the top 5 at least.
Exactly. I agree.
Right? Let's be honest. I mean, to put Tank ranked 4th in my rankings is extremely difficult because he could easily be ranked 1 and just clean up the division and knock everyone out. He just has that ability.
Yes.
So again, it just makes it really hard. Phil, who do you want to see in 2022?
I want to see the top dog of the division, in my opinion, Kambosos, versus either Loma or Tank. Because I just think those guys they're good matchups and they're the top guys. I want to see the best of the best, like Carlos said, best of the best. So, yeah, Kambosos versus Loma or Tank. Devin Haney, I don't think he's ready yet. He's gotta fight somebody more challenging his next fight. And then Teo just came off of L, and like Monty said, he might not be in the division anymore. So we might not even be having this conversation next year because he might be in the next division up. So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Kambosos fight.
So I'll second that. I mean, I'd love to see him. What's interesting about Kambosos is it's good to talk about him because his ability to both mix it up with power punchers like a Teofimo Lopez, but also his very underrated boxing ability. I had no idea until I saw the highlights and more clips of the guy. His left hook and jab are extremely accurate, extremely active. He does not let you get away with an exchange. And I'll say the same thing of Devin Haney. He does not let you engage with him. He'll throw a few back, always answers back. And what surprised me to talk about Devin Haney, once again, I'm upselling him, I understand that, is his inside game. I had no idea that he could rough up a guy up as well. And when I got into the video on the Haney fight with Jojo Diaz, many uppercuts to the stomach, many rib shots, many crosses to the belly. He was able to sap a lot of air out of Diaz in that respect. And in a way that I don't think Tank Davis was able to do that exact comparable thing. I want to know what you think about that. It was obviously there was the injury. That doesn't cancel out his clear discomfort with a guy who's right in his chest and stayed there,
Is Isaac Cruz a true 135? Do you think that plays a factor into it?
Oh, absolutely. He actually was. That's another thing. You compare that to the Santa Cruz fight. Tank Davis is fighting really a blown up featherweight. And he had a real, true lightweight in front of him who was actually fighting him in a way that he never fought before. A guy who doesn't jab, who doesn't reveal his length. And you compare that to Haney's response to Jojo Diaz, it was very telling. So that's very interesting, actually. But the fact remains, Kambosos, another thing very underrated is his chin. Very, very, very repeatedly was taking shots out of Lopez and weathered them. So as far as his matchup against Tank Davis, I mean, can he withstand that punch? Yeah, he can, because he took it from, I think, the biggest lightweight there is Teofimo Lopez. I don't think you get bigger than that. I think you get stronger than that. And he took it.
What really impressed me about Kambosos is he was poised. He didn't panic, and he showed how smart he is in that ring.
In New York too.
Yeah, I was going to say what I love about Kambosos. I mean, obviously there's the technical part of the sport, but Kambosos went into the lion's den. Phil and I were there. That was a very extremely pro Teofimo Lopez crowd. Obviously in New York City, but I think it could have been anywhere outside of Australia. He was a lineal champion, multi organizations belt holder. He just had that star power, and it did not phase Kambosos at all in regards to the moment. From the moment he came out of the tunnel for the ring walk to the bell, that first round was explosive. And clearly we saw the effect and the results of that first round. He took it to him and did everything he needed to do to not just weather the storm from Teofimo Lopez, but he knocked him down too. And that's an extremely poised fighter right there. Clearly his experience, and it's been said many times on the internet, whether you're watching on YouTube or reading an article, his training and his sparring sessions with Manny Pacquiao, iron sharpens iron. That was amazing to see. Amazing to see live, certainly in that environment.
I agree with Chris. I mean, if you train with the best, you're going to come out with some great knowledge. He saw what worked and he stuck. He stuck to it. And it kept working. It wasn't broke, so though he didn't fix it. He just kept doing it. He kept doing it. Double jab, left hook, and then circle to your left, and he worked. And that was a great win. That was a big win. It's good for boxing and
great for boxing.
It's good for boxing, and this is why we're having our video now. It's good for us too. There's something for us to talk about.
So one thing I want to talk about is Visiliy Lomachenko, and I mentioned we've seen him multiple times, even with losing the belts and having 2 fights since, the most recent being Richard Comey. Clearly, his last fight with Richard Comey was impressive, but I don't think it was impressive enough to say, wow, he's back. He's the best of the lightweight division. However, there are plenty of analysts and boxing fans out there saying that Vasily Lomachenko belongs back at the top of the 135-pound division. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I agree with it. He just lost that one fight to Teo, and it shouldn't set him back so many rankings that he's not at least in the top 5. He's still in the top 5, in my opinion, for sure.
What about top 2?
Top 2? Well, I did have him at 2 on my list, so I would have to say top 2. Behind Kambosos, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I believe he's top shelf, so he's certainly top 5. But there are folks out there who think he's back ranked at 1 at 135.
I would just say those are the folks who believe, and I think there's a lot of credibility to this, but we can't play what ifs, that he really was injured heading into the Lopez fight. That's what his camp has put out, and I think his most ardent supporters, the people a lot of the folks who think that he's in the top 2, top 3, would say that was a bad night for him, and that Lopez's subsequent showing revealed some chinks in that armor. So I think some of that shine came back to Lomachenko when they saw what a good boxer could do to him. The thing is, Lomachenko could outbox a lot of these guys. It's the same with Devin Haney, but you don't know whether both of their lack of true hitting power would set them back. And so you see Tank Davis evens that out. When he gets one clean left uppercut, good night. So he's got the equalizer. But then again, you can say Kambosos has a chin. So,
right.
My goodness. And another thing with Kambosos, I want to say, when we talked about Haney's attributes, Kambosos is half an inch taller, 5'9.5".
He's a tall man, well, at least in that division, compared to his counterparts, certainly.
Yeah, and he's got that great, as Carlos said, that great jab. That jab becomes a hook, and he whips it twice, and he keeps his chin tucked in. And the chin is strong anyway, so even if he pierces guard, he can still absorb it.
One thing I like about Kambosos was certainly his volume punching. Again, maybe that's something he picked up from Manny Pacquiao, but his volume punching did equalize a lot of the effort that Teofimo pressed on Kambosos. And again, I found that, obviously that was very, very effective, but I found it very impressive. The one thing about Loma, and Monty, you alluded to this, and this is something we discussed when we were at the Loma fight, I just don't know about the damaging power, or if he has any damaging power against some of the big dogs in 135. He can box, unquestionable. His movement, his foot speed, it's something that's amazing and beautiful to watch. It's impressive, and it can dominate his opponent at any time. You mentioned that there was a potential injury, at least it was out there, versus Teofimo Lopez. But when we watched that fight live, guys, again, we were all holed up in our houses watching it during the height of the pandemic. We were just waiting for Lomachenko to throw. It took until round 7 or 8 to actually create some volume and push the pressure on Teofimo. And at that moment, or by the time that actually happened, it was too late.
I'm actually curious about that. How these fighters handle both adversity and success. Because as we see, I don't think Teofimo Lopez handled success that well. He had a gift-wrapped opponent in New York City, where he's from. As you saw, a pro Lopez crowd, and he clearly, by delaying the fight so many times, it appears like he was struggling with success. The personal stuff that's come out. He had a very disorganized camp. He argues with his own promoter. The way, and then by contrast, the way Lomachenko rebounded from that loss, the way that, that Kambosos held true. Once again, he handled that adversity of having the fight scheduled over and over again, and he's in another time.
Never stop training.
Yeah. He went through some personal losses too. So you might say, well, Lopez went through this, went through that. Well, it's like, well, he lost his grandfather. I don't know what to say to you. And every fighter goes through bull crap and personal loss or personal tragedies. And how they weather that storm is very, very revealing, And I'll say the same thing for Cruz, being on that down, like what appears to be a setup match, gift wrap for Tank Davis, and he rose to the moment. And like I said, I've never seen Tank Davis struggle like that, injury or not. He appeared visibly uncomfortable. Anyone who saw that fight.
Wrapping up here. So let's imagine 2023 is on the horizon here. Who's holding all the belts?
Tank Davis.
I got Kambosos.
Yeah, the Australian Spartan for me. I think he can, in a war, which he's been through, we've already seen that he steps up. I think he takes it.
I'll say Devin Haney, and it's not like if there was a tournament in the lightweight division, that would be awesome to kind of figure out or crown the true champion of 135. But I just feel a lot of the fights will not happen, unfortunately. One of the reasons you already mentioned Teofimo Lopez and his pending move to 140.
And if Kambosos still has it, if Kambosos still keeps the belt, I'm happy for it. It's not that I'm rooting against him. Love what he did. Made me such a big fan of him. If he's still holding it, I'll be glad to be wrong. I'm rooting for him too.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of Devin Haney, huge fan of George Kambosos, and now a huge fan of Visiliy Cruz. I mean, I want to see those three flourish in this division moving forward into the next year.
Yeah.
Hey, who's that guy you put at number 8 on your list, Chris?
Oh, Ryan Garcia. Please let us know your thoughts on the rankings in the 135-pound lightweight division. Share your comments and rankings below.
Yo, Chris, who'd you have for your 8th spot on your rankings?
Ryan Garcia.
Okay. Ryan Garcia.